when it comes to what trends are in and out, remember, I think there's cycles of these things. And just because one trend is now surging doesn't mean that last trend isn't still valid. And so if that's part of how you've built your business, it doesn't mean that it's still not important. I've noticed that a lot in beauty, for example, whether it's lash lifts, no extensions anymore. There's people like me that are going to want still extensions. I still think lash lifts look great, right? But I think it's important to be true to what you want to offer. And if anything, think about maybe I could expand on that. If you already offer services that are similar and that's something you say, you know what? My customers might like that as an offering. It's another data point. It's another opportunity to explore what might make your business the best business you ever envisioned. So that's another thing that I think is important to keep in your mind as a business owner. It's seizing the opportunity when it aligns with your business, knowing that consumers that probably are going to your business are looking for it anyways. It's a great way to attract new business as well.
Well, everyone, welcome back to Behind the Review. Today is a very special episode. I'm chatting with one of my Yelp colleagues, Tara Lewis, all about Yelp trends. She's going to give us all the insight on when Yelp first started tracking trends, why we can be the trend tracker and have some of these insights, as well as some of the really cool stories and how we've seen small businesses and local businesses jump on trends and make trends their own. So I'm super excited about today. Tara, to kick us off, why don't you give everyone an intro of yourself and tell them about your journey at Yelp?
I've been at Yelp now for quite some time, since 2009. And my current role is Vice President of Community Expansion and Yelp Trends. And I am Yelp's trend expert. When I started my Yelp journey, it was in Washington, D.C. as Yelp's D.C. Community Manager. And if you're not too familiar with the term Community Manager at Yelp, I had the opportunity and the privilege to help connect local businesses to our Yelp community in D.C., my hometown, which was an absolute dream job for me. I was able to use my creativity to tell stories, much like you do, Emily, and so many of our other colleagues in community, and celebrate local businesses. And so that's where my career started. I then grew and eventually started leading teams and management of community managers, and then regional leads that manage teams of community managers. So that evolved over time in terms of that. And my focus has changed. So we went from launching a lot of Yelp communities in those early days. And now my job in terms of community expansion is actually how do we grow emerging markets and developing markets that may not be as established as our New Yorks and our LAs, but are very important to have a strong presence in, and for business owners to be able to connect with us on the ground there. I also work with our online community ambassadors, which are actually in our biggest communities, to help connect with our users in these large communities where it's very difficult for a community manager to have connections with that many users. So it's all in the spirit of growing communities, celebrating local businesses, and yeah, the stories and moments and life-changing occurrences that take place in the work that we do is really what's kept me fueled and has kept me at Yelp for 15 years now.
I love that. I can't believe it's been 15 years, but you have that unique experience of from the time where Yelp wasn't a household name all the way to today. And I know the company is so lucky and grateful to have you as a voice for what we're doing and to help us understand where we need to grow. So I'm so grateful that you're here with us and grateful for all the work that you do for Yelp. Let's talk a little bit about the Trends program. How long has Yelp been focused on trends, and why do we feel we have this unique ability to highlight and forecast trends?
Yeah, well, we've always known that we had very valuable information in terms of what consumers are searching for. But in 2019, when I was identified as being Yelp's trend expert, that's really when we realized that our data could help so many people in so many different ways, both consumers and business owners. And we launched our very first Yelp's Trend Report, which was at first an annual report. I believe it was the 2020 Trends Report that we launched. We didn't really know what to expect. And I think within a month of that, I was on the Today Show and Good Morning America back to back. And that was coming from somebody that had done maybe one or two local television spots. So we knew that our data was interesting, and it was, I think the producers and the shows that we went on and the publications that covered this, even though we didn't know what to expect, I think they really gravitated towards knowing that this is coming from a large collective audience and community. This is not just an individual identifying a trend. This is the power of our community. And to be able to identify that, have it be data-based, have insights into regionalities and things like that. It's really powerful and it's interesting. And we're not just pulling it out of thin air. There's actually quantitative elements that support that. And so since then, we continued to launch it annually, and it was always exciting. We could look at year over year data in terms of searches and mentions and reviews and things like that. And then, more recently, we were able to launch our monthly trend tracker just this past year, which gives us insights that are monthly, up to date, and also can give us a snapshot on trends that maybe we don't predict will have a lot of longevity, but in the moment, they're very important. I think when you think about a 12-year snapshot, so much happens in a year in general that there are moments that could be missed, and they're really fun to cover, as well as seasonality. There's always elements of that influence our consumers and what they're searching for, and we want to be able to help businesses meet them and rise to that occasion, while also educating consumers about things that they might like and be able to find on Yelp.
And one of the things that I remember from the early days of Yelp data and kind of seeing this come together was when we watched poke bowls kind of move from like Hawaii onto mainland, and searches were increasing, and then businesses were opening that offered this type of food. But also some businesses added it as a new menu item to maybe an existing thing that they offered. And so, that was a long time ago. And now poke bowls are all over the place. I mean, small cities, big cities, they're everywhere. And that was, an early day example of a trend that, like you mentioned, lasted a long time, right? It's now like a very common thing in our world. Mm-hmm. But some of these things are little bursts, right? Like maybe the flavor ube and how that gets brought into different menu items or different businesses. What are some of the ones that you remember that we got right, or maybe we were on the forefront of highlighting for people?
Yeah, well, you mentioned ube. That was one that I think before we even had the data. I personally have always loved Filipino food, and I started to see it pop up a little bit more in emerging markets, and the data supported it. It was actually featured in in our very first trend report. And at that point, you could only find it a little bit here and there in major cities that have lots of Filipino restaurants or other presence. And then I think over time, you saw ube everywhere. I'm not saying that we were directly part of that, but we were able to pinpoint that moment, have a pulse on it. And then also it gave opportunity for us to educate a little bit about the history of ube. It's interesting because so many trends, they're not new. They're just new to maybe the masses or new to our country. And so to be able to provide that context, and then also business owners that maybe hadn't thought about incorporating that into the flavors and the dishes and the drinks that they use, it might just infuse a little more creativity and not really pivot them too far from what they love to do anyway. So I think that was one that we nailed. Lymphatic drainage massages was one that in 2020 we also saw emerging that continued to trend. Espresso martinis, I think, was one of the biggest ones that we called early, and we've seen that. Of course, it's a classic, but we've seen like a surge in popularity for the past couple of years. We also saw that interest in espresso martinis birth new trends, like the interest in the carajillo cocktail, for example, that coffee drinkers that also like cocktails seem to like. We've identified that as a trend also. I think also silver curiosity has been something we have been able to really speak to. Sobriety is a spectrum in terms of consumers. And I think both with wellness and health top of mind, lifestyle changes that people are curious about pursuing, they have been looking for more mocktails and low ABV cocktails, zero proof cocktails, as a lot of my friends in the industry might say, more so than the word mocktail. But we've definitely nailed that. One trend that I think is interesting, and it's more like it continues to evolve. I'm like, the croissant is the gift that keeps giving. I'm like, every year there's like a new croissant food. Like it went from the cronut, and then in our 2022 report we had the croffle, and then it was the supreme, which was like that huge croissant that was cream filled, and then we had the crookie in 2024. So it's interesting to see certain trends like continue to shape shift a little bit, but it's like clearly people are loving croissants and and different iterations of that. I'm sure we called caviar trending in our last year's trend report, and I think you've probably seen all over social media and mainstream that caviar and caviar bumps and caviar, also pairing it with low and high foods has been fun to see. So I think We've nailed quite a few of them, but I also love to see how emerging trends give birth to the next iteration of trends, whether that's because it introduced consumers to something that's adjacent that they might like, or a food genre that maybe they hadn't explored before. And I think that it's great that we're able to share that and expand people's experiences.
Absolutely. And I think the croissant is such a great example of how a trend can evolve and how a business maybe hears about a trend and then adapts it to be more realistic for them, right?
Mhm.
Like leveraging trend data isn't always about taking a thing that's popular and making sure that you have it. Like not every trend is going to relate to you or your business. So evolutions of trends are really cool and they show the personality of a business, right? And how they
Absolutely.
maybe interpret something. Your business might have offered something with low or no alcohol or been able to make a cocktail without the alcoholic ingredient, but maybe you weren't promoting that or putting it front and center on a menu. And when you see that that's becoming a trend, you can just take that extra time to identify it as an option at your business instead of making those people do the work to kind of seek it out or ask if it's available. And that can attract new people, by adding something specific to address that audience. It can bring new people into your business for the very first time, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I also think that one thing I've just noticed observationally is that I've noticed that there's also businesses that will be really creative with their mocktails. Of course, their cocktails are as well, but like a friend of mine introduced sorrel, which is very popular in the Caribbean, a hibiscus based flavor, into her mocktail. And it became like a bestseller at a traditional cocktail bar because people were curious about that flavor specifically, because not everybody had been exposed to it. So it also added a level of intrigue to somebody that maybe not be intentionally interested at the moment of exploring a mocktail, but then also being introduced to that. I think another sort of like lifestyle trend that we've seen is shift to plant-based options and just the spectrum of what that looks like. I think that's another low-hanging fruit in terms of businesses and what they offer, to be able to accommodate all types of lifestyles. There's so many delicious vegan and vegetarian foods and cuisine options now that anyone, no matter whether you're a meat eater or not, can find really delicious, healthy vegan and vegetarian cuisine. And it, I think, opens consumers' minds to realizing you don't necessarily need meat for it to be delicious, because delicious food is delicious food.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what you're excited about for 2025. And I think something really cool is, we're known for food and restaurants, but our trends really expand beyond that. We talk about trends in a lot of different industries. So give us the rundown. What are some of the 2025 ones that stick out to you or excite you?
Well, we were just speaking about beverages, and mushroom infused beverages have been really popular, from cocktails to coffee. And they're not, culinary mushrooms; they're functional mushrooms. So they have health benefits that are believed to often help manage, body stress, restore balance, help boost your immunity. So we've seen searches for mushroom coffee up 87%. We've also seen overall the term mushroom drink is up 501% in searches compared to last year. Mushroom tea is up 10%. So we're seeing that across the spectrum. I myself had a chagachino made of chaga mushrooms just last month when I was in New York at a business called Yours Truly, and it was delicious. It was kind of a mushroom mocha drink, and the idea is that it's supposed to help support immunity and promote like anti-aging, boost your energy without some of the jitters that maybe coffee might provide. And it's interesting because I shared that with somebody and they were like, oh, that sounds like it's going to be gross. And I'm like, no, it's actually a very soft, nutty flavor that would fall in the spectrum of the flavors that you would like if you're a coffee drinker or tea drinker. So it's funny because some people in their minds, they have what they think a mushroom or mushroom drink might taste like. But when you really think about it, you're like, oh, mushrooms are kind of earthy, right? Teas are kind of earthy, right? Like it's not that far, but I think sometimes when people hear something at first, it's a little shocking if they haven't been introduced to it yet. But yeah, the chagachino that I had was great, and same with some cocktails that have had mushrooms infused, both for flavor and also just for potential health benefits. In the beauty, wellness, and lifestyle sector, as somebody that spent most of my career focused on community building, it was great to see an overall trend of people seeking out connections. I think that when you think about the pandemic and the fact that people were stripped from a lot of that ability to make those in-person connections. I think there was even a little period after that people weren't quite ready to get out and about. And I think that we've seen things kind of turn full circle now. We saw searches for social clubs up 39%, book clubs up 26%, chess clubs, run clubs. They were all surging in searches, indicating that people are looking to find new ways to connect with others, like-minded individuals as well. Even trivia, game nights were surging. Modern lawn clubs were also, I think, up 682% in searches. So people are looking to get back to socializing, but very much aligned with like-minded people and interests. Adult camps also was a trend that we identified as sort of being the new getaway. That's also, in my opinion, in the spirit of community building. When you think about summer camps growing up, a lot of that was bonding and activities and being close to nature and hands-on activities. And it's a great vacation alternative for adults. So we've seen an increase in searches for that, up 347%. Wellness retreats, postpartum retreats, holistic retreats, they've all also increased in searches. So people are also looking to connect with others in their vacation getaways as well. And then we also saw a lot of interest in dopamine boosting hobbies. So people are looking for ways to boost some excitement into their lives and to get that feel good boost that dopamine provides by being very hands-on with some of their hobbies. They sort of put to the side at different periods of their life. And this is a great time for people to re-embrace that or re-explore. So sewing classes were up in searches, jewelry making, songwriting classes were up, even blacksmith classes were up over 500%. Also for the foodies, there were pasta making classes that were up over 500%, latte art classes up 400%. So people were revisiting their hobbies and trying to mix up their daily routines with things that really bring them joy and that are hands-on and often very part of a creative expression. In the home and design category, Japanese design was something that we identified as being a really big trend right now. It's a minimalist design philosophy that blends like the calming simplicity of Japanese and Scandinavian elements with natural materials, clean lines, and overall room harmony. We first highlighted Japanese design in our 2022 forecast, but we believe that the searches for this have increased again more recently in our 2025 report, which is now up 105%. And we think it's likely due to a lot of the surge in Japanese tourism as people are looking to embrace Japanese culture and are inspired by home designs and sensibilities of those experiences when they are traveling to Japan. Another home and design trend that I think is exciting that my home doesn't necessarily reflect that, but it's kind of like goals, is the discreet smart design and blended luxury trend, which, our savvy service professionals on Yelp are definitely bringing this into homes, the smart home design. It's very versatile, it's discreet, it exudes quiet luxury. And so searches for things like smart windows have increased, smart lighting has increased, multifunctional smart appliances in general are up 40%. We've also seen that people are searching for discreet designs as part of their renovations, like home libraries, built-in bookshelves. That was up 124%. Invisible kitchens also went up, and hidden storage was up 68%. So it's that sort of very sleek, discreet, luxurious and tech savvy approach to home design that I also thought was really cool to see.
Yeah, I love that. And I personally think it's because of all the real estate reality shows on Netflix. Everyone wants to be like in those amazing homes. And so Yelp is a great place to search for home pros and find an expert to help you with that stuff instead of DIYing everything. We've got tons of experts that can help you and make you feel very luxurious in your home. So
stop doing it yourself, right?
That's right. Open up your Yelp app and do a search. You'll find a better expert. I love that. This has been so helpful and informative. I definitely want everyone to check out our trend tracker. We'll link to that in the show notes. But let's talk a little bit about implementation and just kind of leveraging this data. We mentioned business owners can see trends coming and maybe incorporate them into their own menu, but you also don't want to be chasing things that aren't relevant to your business. So what is your advice and guidance for business owners when it comes to keeping up on trends and maybe integrating them into their brand?
Yeah, you nailed it. I definitely think it's so important. Just like at Yelp, our company, one of our company values is to be authentic. It's so important that businesses stay authentic to what their vision is. Of course, a business is constantly evolving and trying to do new things and reposition themselves. So of course it's constantly going to be changing, but hopefully it's always true to form of what that business owner wants others to connect with. It's what makes local businesses so special. What makes consumers gravitate towards places, because you're going to have a unique experience at each one. So if everyone adopted a trend, it would be generic, right? So that's the first thing, is making sure it's authentic. But having this information and knowing that consumers are looking for certain things, I've noticed that there's business owners that are often have items on their menu already that people may not realize is actually aligned with the trend, for example. So maybe you have, let's say pickle martinis are trending, and you have a pickle martini, but you've named it something totally different. It's suppressed, low on the menu. It's going to take people forever. And we know that people are searching pickle martinis up X number percentage during a certain period of time. How do you make sure that's clear? Whether it's rebranding it as a pickle martini, putting it on a happy hour special, knowing that consumers are seeking this out. I've noticed that sometimes there's a disconnect between how that business has it, which, I've looked for things before and I found them by accident because I was at a business and I'm thinking, I searched this last week and I would not have known. I also think sometimes there's small things that, whether it's a play on, let's say our monthly trend tracker covered something that was maybe a surge in pop culture. It doesn't take that much. If it's something that aligns with you and that you think is cute and funny and part of your own business personality, if you had a drink that was a pun on that, you're already going to capitalize on that interest. If there's a season finale of something, or something that's happening in pop culture, or maybe a very famous hippo that's all over TikTok for a while, those things are moments that, if it aligns, you can seize the opportunity and have some fun with it. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to change what you do. I also think it's really important when we think about trends, is not to think about trends as being in or out. If you've noticed, trends are cyclical. It might take 10, 15, 20 years, but whether it's beauty or food, aesthetics of certain types, home design, for example, if you're going to be doing these rehauls and renovation projects, if you're not doing something that you truly love and that you want to have as part of your environment every day, it's a waste of money and time. So I really encourage business owners and consumers to take this information and see it as ways to enhance their life, enhance their business, and seize opportunities, really. If smart design is interesting to consumer because it helps you organize things and keeps things sleek in your home, and that's what you love, that's great. As a business owner, if you realize that little chocolate cocoa, remember those little cocoa hot bombs that you put into like hot milk? During seasonality, let's say you realize that no one in your area has that, and you can offer that as a small checkout item. That right there, knowing that people are searching it, it doesn't change your whole business. But yeah, when it comes to what trends are in and out, remember, I think there's cycles of these things. And just because one trend is now surging doesn't mean that last trend isn't still valid. And so if that's part of how you've built your business, it doesn't mean that it's still not important. I've noticed that a lot in beauty, for example, whether it's lash lifts, no extensions anymore. There's people like me that are going to want still extensions. I still think lash lifts look great, right? But I think it's important to be true to what you want to offer. And if anything, think about, maybe I could expand on that. If you already offer services that are similar and that's something you say, you know what? My customers might like that as an offering. It's another data point. It's another opportunity to explore what might make your business the best business you ever envisioned. So that's another thing that I think is important to keep in your mind as a business owner. It's seizing the opportunity when it aligns with your business, knowing that consumers that probably are going to your business are looking for it anyways. It's a great way to attract new business as well.
Such great advice. I think that's super helpful and relevant. No matter your industry, no matter what the trend is, you don't want to be bending over backwards and creating something that you don't want to be offering or doing in your business. So that's great. On Behind the Review, we always talk about reviews, and you have a lot of experience both writing reviews, helping businesses with their reviews. What advice would you give, whether it's to consumers or business owners, as it relates to online reviews and engaging and connecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking about it recently because I was looking at my profile and I realized I had almost all like 5 and 4 star reviews, almost all 5. And one of my friends one time was like, "Do you ever write negative reviews?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I use Yelp for almost everything." So that consistency on a business profile very often is so consistent that it's hard for me to experience otherwise. Sometimes when I don't look at Yelp and I might have a mixed experience, I always think about, how do I want to write that review? And one thing that I learned as a community manager after going to so many events, always networking and talking, the best advice I could give to a consumer writing reviews is one, to realize how valuable that feedback is. That feedback can help that business long term in ways that you can't even imagine. Of course, you want to always be mindful. I would never write anything that I couldn't look to somebody in their face and say honestly as well. So that always keeps me writing in a tone of kindness and truth and honesty. And also, the feedback is critical feedback where it can be helpful. I'm not going to provide details that aren't helpful for that business. Think about when you're running a business, you can't have every single customer interaction on lock. There's so many factors in that, but you can re-engage with consumers after that. It's much easier, as you know, Emily, to re-engage a customer than to find a new one. And to me, I see it as almost a retention tool. It's a retention opportunity. So if a business is not interacting with the user afterwards, I think it's a missed opportunity no matter what. I also see it as sort of the greatest opportunity to implement feedback. Of course, there's always going to be outliers. If somebody goes to a family style a dining experience and they say, I hate that everybody was sharing plates, that is a disconnect overall, right? You're not going to change your business based on that kind of feedback. But I remember one time, years ago, I went to a cupcake shop. I ordered a buttercream cupcake. It did not taste like what I'm used to as a buttercream. So I wrote the review. I complimented the service and things that were good. And then I said, I don't know what was different, but this was not what I thought. And so that was a moment of feedback. The business owner wrote me back in the most kind way and educated me about the difference between different types of buttercream based on different regions. Her approach was a special type of buttercream, which I didn't know. She offered a secondary buttercream there too that was more in the flavor palette that I was looking for. So just that alone, as a customer, I was like, oh, one, I learned something new. So it's a mutual exchange there. Two, I came right back because I valued that connection that just happened, the time she took to educate me about what I didn't know, and then I found what I wanted. So in a situation like that, it was sort of an ecosystem of wins because it was a retention, it was a misunderstanding from my own knowledge, not being a baker. I would not have known about regional nuances in buttercream. So I always think about that as well as a consumer. Like, ideally, hopefully, you are sharing the best businesses in your area with people, and you are supporting these local businesses that are part of your local economy and part of your community. There's a lot in that. So when I write reviews, I put a lot of love into it. But if it's not an amazing experience, I always think about how can I help this business through my feedback, and also making sure that even though I might write at times with a little bit of humor, it's never at the expense of anybody. It's never to sensationalize a moment for a laugh. So I think there's also that, because I think people want to be entertaining when they write reviews, but also it should never be at the expense of anyone involved at that business or otherwise, or even diners and consumers. So yeah, those are some things that I think about in terms of how review writing. I just think that I've been so lucky working at Yelp to sort of see how intimately I've received so much feedback from business owners where even like one review in the early stages of that business has changed the whole trajectory of the business. So those lesser known spots, it's such a game changer when you can share that. Pictures are also great visuals. I think sometimes people may not realize, you might see a storefront. It may not look that impressive. You might walk by it. You may not know. I actually found a place in New York that if I wasn't hunting it on Yelp, I would have walked past 3 times. It was actually in the basement of a location, but it ended up being the most amazing sushi spot that was a part of a ghost kitchen, basically. But if I hadn't gone, it ended up being like a fine dining-ish Japanese restaurant. But it was so hidden and not intentionally. It was it was just one of those moments. So it's like you can never judge a book by its cover, and those photos really can help draw people in as well.
I love that. That was fantastic advice on both sides of the coin. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you thought I might ask you about trends, Yelp, consumers, business owners? Anything you wanted to share before we close out?
No, I think I covered everything.
You did amazing.
I always want to make sure people know, like, we aren't like this is data. Like, we're not creating the trends. Like, we are reporting data. So I think I covered that. I also like to make it clear to business owners, this is not trend chasing. I know some business owners that are like actually like because they find that trends feel very gimmicky. And it's, to me, this is data that can help you, So I hope that we talked about it in that way, because that's, to me, like the most important distinctions when we talk about our trend tracker. I'm like, it's not just to get press. It's like, this is really interesting stuff that's happening with mass numbers of consumers.